everything that everyone thinks about what I'm going to do doesn't matter. Okay. I don't care what they have to say about whether or not they think that I'm going to throw 95. I think back when I was in junior college and like some of my closest friends at the time, when I told them I was going to throw 95 and play in the minor leagues and finally get an opportunity, I'm telling you right now, these people laughed in my face and told me that I would never throw 95 miles per hour. Okay. I sat upper 90s.
All right, so we got my good friend Albertus Barber on the podcast tonight, and I'm super excited for it because we played together with the Phillies, but we originally met at Driveline Baseball in 2018 when I was an 18-year-old, and I don't know how old you were, but that was the first time we met. And I know you have a pretty crazy journey coming from where you came from into Driveline and to the Phillies. So take us a little bit through your journey from how you actually got there.
Yeah. So uh, originally, what happened for me to get to Driveline was I had spent the last 7 years of my life being terrible at the game of baseball. Okay. And not only was I terrible, but I couldn't stay healthy. I was lifting 2 to 3 times a day because I thought that was a good idea. I was barely sleeping. Realistically, I was just being as inefficient as possible and doing more and kept breaking down, right? And so I got tired of college. I got tired of going from place to place to try to find answers. And so I was like, all right, I'm going to go to the place that has the most answers right now, clearly. And they did. And so we end up at Driveline. And sure enough, when we get there, all the coaches, it was just this pool of the most talent we had ever seen, right? And all of those people are working fantastic jobs. They're at the heads of organizations and coordinating. And so, you know, that's where we met. And that's where everything started to actually become serious in my journey, okay? Because up until that point, it was essentially just me throwing darts at a dartboard and hoping that something would stick. And every person I went to had different experience with all of these tools and this information, but it wasn't relevant to the time that we are in. All of the information was older information. It was cookie cutter information. And there wasn't people who had fully dove into biomechanics and kinesiology and just how everything is supposed to move. And, so we go there and we have access to these people. And that was a game changer, obviously, for both of us, because I went from a nobody with an ADRA in college to professional baseball. Okay. And you
Yeah,
went
I was
from,
gonna quickly ask, like when you said you sucked, how bad did you suck? Like, give us some actual numbers.
so I was so bad at baseball that the fact that I even considered playing professional baseball, I was clearly delusional. Okay. I mean, I had a 7.5 ERA. I gave up multiple hits per inning. My whip was over a two. Um, I walked more than 1.5 people an inning. And while doing all of this, I'm throwing upper 80s. Okay. So nobody doing that is ever going to get signed to play professional baseball. Okay. And if you're doing that, realize you're also so far from playing professional baseball that, like, if you still believe in yourself, it's a good sign. But, anyways,
Especially now, right? Because it's so hard to get back into Pro Bowl right now.
yeah, limited roster spots. But, yeah, over a 7 ERA, walked the house, and really just couldn't stay healthy. So, not only would I not contribute, but I also couldn't stay healthy. And so I was bad. I was bad.
Mm. But you were in the upper 80s though. Was there something that you did like that actually got you to the upper 80s, or Were you kind of like you got to the upper 80s pretty quick and then you just stayed there?
So what happened is I was 90 to 92 in high school, and my senior year I broke my hand diving for a ball, so I couldn't play. Um, but up until that point, I had been working with the Texas Baseball Ranch from the time that I was 12 until 18 years old, okay? And so I had been exposed to these more modern training techniques and these ways to get players better that wasn't just pushing off of the rubber or using your glove side to pull open at the right time. You know, we're actually throwing medicine balls, throwing plyo balls. My dad had me throwing weighted balls when I was 9 years old. Before people were throwing weighted balls, my father went to academy and bought these differently weighted baseballs. And at 9 years old, he had me throwing them as hard as I could and radar gunning me up my driveway into a net. So he was actually really early when it came to a lot of those things. And so I'm blessed to where I was always exposed to these things. Um, it was just unfortunate that I was born such a terrible athlete and really had to do them for so much longer than everybody else around me, realistically. So very blessed. But with that blessing was definitely the curse of looking like an uncoordinated kangaroo half the time I was playing baseball.
So yeah, well, that's awesome. So you say that you were a terrible athlete, but you still got to 90-92. Do you believe that like anyone can get to that level?
Truthfully, I think that if people are willing to actually put their money where their mouth is, um, I don't believe that genetics are even close to as inhibiting and limiting factor as we think. I think that genetics have been kind of overrated with how we view them now. Um, and I say this because clearly we've evolved through thousands of years of evolution and become significantly better athletes. And at some point, somebody had to push the boundary of their own genetics to achieve that. And so sometimes I think that we put too much weight into genetics, and that realistically, if we train hard enough and we're willing to sacrifice ourselves and throw ourselves into the flames to adapt, 99.9% of the time, the iron is going to become more tough and you're going to adapt after you come out of that fire, okay? And the thing about that is to get there, you have to be realistic. You have to accept that you're bad or wherever you are, and then you have to be willing to try these different and extreme and these new things and potentially everything until you have the answer that personally works for you, because there's nothing that works for every single athlete, and then there's some things that might only work for three athletes in history, okay? But the realistic viewpoint on it is that everything works, and you have to find specifically what works for that athlete and to kind of observe, take notes of everything, um, and just move forward, press your own genetics, try extreme things, and it will work. I promise it will work. I went from a 22-inch vertical as a junior in college to a 38-inch vertical, okay, within a year and a half, right? And so you cannot tell me, the person who went from an uncoordinated kangaroo to an elite athlete, that genetics are really that big of a factor, okay? Because I just don't believe that.
Hmm. Yeah, no, that makes a lot of sense. And so you said that um like in college you were delusional, but you still had that belief that you were going to go play Pro Bowl. And even when I was with you in 2018, there was never like a doubt in your mind that, yeah, bro, I'm going Pro Bowl. Like, where do you think that kind of stemmed from?
Um, I think it stems a lot from my personality and the fact that if I realistically want something, I'm going to do everything in my power to go and achieve it. Um, and it also came from understanding that everything that everyone thinks about what I'm going to do doesn't matter. Okay. I don't care what they have to say about whether or not they think that I'm going to throw 95. I think back of when I was in junior college, and like some of my closest friends at the time, when I told them I was going to throw 95 and play in the minor leagues and finally get an opportunity, I'm telling you right now, these people laughed in my face and told me that I would never throw 95 miles per hour. Okay. I sat upper 90s before I exploded. All right. I promise. Like, when they told me that, I just used it as fuel for the fire for the next 12 months. Okay. And so all of these people that told me these things, all these people who didn't believe in me, they all quit. Okay. Every single one of these people quit. And so you have to understand that a lot of the time when people are telling you you're not going to do these things, or they're telling you your dreams aren't realistic, it's really just them projecting the fact that they'll never fully commit to anything in their entire lives. All right. And they don't believe that you can do it because they don't believe that they can do it. And because they don't believe they can do it, that's why they just project that you can't do it either. But the reality is, in this world, is that if you put your left foot forward and then you put your right foot forward and then you just repeat that over and over and over again and you keep walking in the right direction, eventually you're going to stumble on something really good. And whether that's you achieving your dreams and everything that you wanted, or maybe that's just you had the greatest journey that you could have ever imagined and it took you and took all of your weaknesses and insecurities and shoved them in your face and made you become a man, that's also a win. And the reality is this one is the normal journey for most people, men and women. That's called life. And so that's the beauty of it, okay? Is that I also understood from an early age, it's not about whether I achieve fully what I think I'm going to achieve or not. It's about whether I really believe in myself enough to pursue this dream to the fullest possible extent longer than every single person that I grew up playing with and every single person around me. And that's what I
Yeah.
truthfully believe equates to success is consistency, um, not taking no for an answer, and you just got to keep walking, pound the stone until it breaks.
Yeah. Yeah, that's so powerful because like a lot of players, it's trite, but um, everyone says like it's the journey, not the destination. And that's being thrown around everywhere, but it's so true where like some players are like, I don't think I'm even gonna be able to make the big league, so why even try? Like I'm not even gonna try. But like the most meaningful stuff comes from the pursuit and actually putting your best effort into it. I'm curious, do you think like all those doubters are what really fueled that like belief in yourself to become a pro? Like was that the fuel that got you going?
Um, yeah, I'm gonna be honest. It was probably a good 30% of it. 70% of it was for Jesus, my family, and then the other 30% was always for them. And that's because that 30% was basically, if I went over that 30%, then I would be consumed with anger, realistically. I would have only been focused on pursuing all the people that didn't believe in me. But having only a slotted small amount for them to where I can just utilize them as an unlimited energy source, that's different, right?
Hmm.
And I talked to an athlete earlier about this because he dealt with a bad coach, and the coach took away a year of his eligibility essentially by not informing him that he didn't make the team until a couple days before season started. Which, in all reality, if you're a decent human being, you're going to inform that athlete well before they're about to lose a year of their life. Okay, you tell them so that they can go and play somewhere else. I promise he knew well before the season, anyways. But we were having this conversation and I told him, I said, hey, just so you know, all these people who don't believe in you every time that you decide you're not going to do what you're supposed to do, they're right. I was like, they're right. They're right about you. And so every time you don't do what you're supposed to do and you don't take advantage of this opportunity that you've been given, yeah, you should be mad at yourself because you didn't have enough accountability to get it done. But at the same time, um, you're proving the people against you correct. And so you need to realize that there's weight in your decisions, okay? You can either be walking in the right direction and really about your convictions that you say you're about, or you're walking in the wrong direction and the person that you dislike was actually correct about you the whole time. Okay. And so I think that there's a fine line between not getting obsessed over the people who tell you that you aren't going to do something, but then also remembering them and understanding that you don't want to prove them right. You know, if you're really about what you say you are as a man, then you're going to get this job done and you're not going to let them be correct.
Mhm. Yeah, that's awesome. That's awesome. All right, so I want to go into so okay, like you sucked in college, and then you decided to pursue driveline baseball, and so you get there. What year did you get there?
I got there on August 23rd, 2018.
Oh, okay. So it's damn. I actually might have been there. No, I would have come a little bit after you, I guess. Maybe I went in 2019. Actually, maybe it wasn't 2018. But yeah, just talk me through what happened when you got there. Like, what made that transformation happen?
Yeah, so I get there, and in my original motion capture, I'm sitting about 90 to 92. I had been up to 94 in games, but I hadn't been up to 94 in months. And this was after I started getting programmed by a guy named Taylor Burns. And Taylor Burns was the first person that introduced me to the more modern side of lifting and pitching. And the programs look significantly different than anything I'd ever seen. But he starts to program me. I get up to 94 miles per hour doing the first actual real weight room program I've ever done in my life, essentially. It's not me going on bodybuilding.com and crushing 30-day programs where we lift every day, right? Like it was actually tailored for baseball. And so I get on this program with Taylor Burns. We get up to 94. I go to Driveline, and I had only been sitting 90, 92 for a little bit. And we realized that one, I have no external rotation, which was crazy. I'm basically pushing the ball in the lower mid 90s, and that I had zero counter rotation of my torso, and that I just moved really fast. Like I just moved really fast, but there was no method to my madness. It was me every bit brute forcing every single ounce of velo that I got. Okay. There was no art to it at all. And believe me when I say that, because I didn't really know where it was going either. And so we get there, and then I meet these two people, and these two people were the biggest influence of my life. Actually, these three people were the biggest influence of my whole career. No, we got to redo that. These four people, these four people were the biggest influence of my whole career. Obviously, Kyle Bodie, um, just the way that he created this business, how he took nets out of the ocean to to form his batting cages when he first started this facility, and just how he believed so much that this was the future of baseball. And that really sold me because he really practiced what he preached, but he also practiced a lot more than he preached. And that says a lot about a man to me. And so I get there, and it's Kyle Bodie, Rob Hill, Eric Jagers, Sam Breen. And I'm picking these guys' brains every day. I ended up being lucky enough to go ahead and live with Eric Jagers and Rob Hill for a little bit. And um, these guys did not sleep, okay? These guys studied baseball every single hour of the day. I'm talking, they would get home at 2 a.m. and we would go over my mechanics and pitch arsenal and pitch design until 3, 4 in the morning. They would sleep till 6. They would wake up, go to driveline, and repeat this every day. They were sleeping 3, 4 hours a night. I've never seen anybody work as hard as these humans have, okay? And even at the end of these long 12 to 15-hour days, they would still pour themselves into me and help educate me about all of this. So I'm forever grateful for all of those minds, for Rob and Jagers for educating me while I lived with them, and then Sam for letting me bug him almost every
Just
second of the
before
day.
you go into Sam, like where's Rob and Jagas right now?
Yeah, so Rob is currently a pitching coordinator for the Los Angeles Dodgers. And Jagers also has a higher up position with the Mets. I don't know the official title of Jagers' position, though. We should probably look that
Yeah,
up.
I think he's like head of pitching. I think he's like the head guy for uh the minor leagues in the Mets,
Yeah.
something like that. But they're
So
both
Rob
like
Hill was the
big guys.
Dodgers. And then
Hmm.
Jagers was he's the head of, Sam's the pitching coordinator too, right? Yeah, he is.
For the Yankees.
Yeah, that was crazy seeing him. But um, yeah, so the people I lived with end up becoming a pitching coordinator for the Los Angeles Dodgers. And then Eric Jagers goes, and now he is the head of pitching for the Mets. And so, yeah, that was clearly going to happen. I'm going to be honest right now. I know Rob changed history with being the youngest coordinator in all of baseball. Um, if you talked to him for more than 15 minutes, you could have called that coming. And the same thing with Jagers, okay? These are two of the most brilliant, well polished minds that I have ever had the honor of knowing. And then on top of that, when I go into the facility, I get to talk to Sam Breen, okay? Sam is now a coordinator for the Yankees. And Sam is also one of the greatest, most well polished minds of all time. And he'll pull down with you, he'll compete against you. Sam could be throwing 89, you could be throwing 104. He's competing against you on pull downs. Is it really realistic for him? No, not at all. But that's what makes Sam a bulldog, okay? And so I have three of the greatest minds I've ever met, and I was lucky to even be able to be around them for a moment of time and absorb anything they had to say. And then obviously props to Kyle Bodie, because the fact that he just amassed all of these people in one area at the same time, astounding, truthfully astounding, and the craziest thing I've seen in my career up until this day.
Yeah, no. Like when I was there at Driveline, like it's crazy looking back. Like every single one of those guys has a big time position in a MLB organization, and I was like, damn, like probably should have taken more advantage of that. You know, listen to them a little bit more instead of arguing with them. But all right, this one's gonna be a hard one. Um, but so you're living with Jagas and Rob Hill. What was some of like the biggest things that you learned from them?
Yeah, so um, first of all, Rob and Jagers simplified everything that we understood at the time about mechanics to me in the simplest forms, right? So I got to learn energy, specific dominances. We went over crazy theories we had in the weight room that ended up being true years later. Um, you know, we're not going to talk about some of the operations that we conducted on even ourselves at the time. But realistically, they taught me everything that I could have ever wanted to learn about how energy moves up the chain, what needs to happen, who needs to have this separation, um, what do we need to worry about if somebody has a genetic bias or if they have a genetic defect from birth? How do we approach this? How to find compensations, how to find what people are elite at compensating at, and how to find things that we take that are bad and make them good enough that they're good, but they don't take away from the things that we do elite, right? Because every athlete is different. And The fact that they taught me so well how to observe that every athlete is so much different and there are no absolutes and there is no one answer for these people. Um, it really helped me throughout my whole career because you observe every case as a new case, which is what it is, right? I understand that coaches have buckets, and buckets are good for original base organization. But at the end of the day, that athlete is a very specific person. And that athlete's parents and his grandparents and their lineage for hundreds of years, and however they've adapted, have come to create this human being, okay? And this human being is nothing like me, and this human being is nothing like you. They could be better, they could be significantly worse. It doesn't matter because it's not the same. So I'm very grateful that they taught me how to be aware of all the differences and to account for everything and to never just take one thing as the answer, but to explore every possible option on planet Earth and understand that even within those options, we might not have the answer and we might have to go find the answer. And understanding that all of these answers, including the ones that everybody in the baseball industry is making, are not correct. You know, they're just not
Hmm.
correct. 4 years ago, we're pitch designing people with tools that we now know don't even properly work and don't tell the story at all. Okay. I'm not going to name them, but globally, we know that. And so you just have to realize and take a step back and say, all right, I can only absorb everything with a grain of salt. And we all have to understand that in 2 years from now, everything we believe could be wrong. And there's a good chance of that. Okay. And so athletes also need to understand that all the people that they're paying are also wrong. Okay. And that ultimately, the only person at the end of the day who will have the perfect answer is going to be the athlete. And that's why the business of coaching people is not only coaching them to throw hard. If you want effective long term athletes who are going to become big leaguers, who are going to become self sustainable and become who they need to also become in life, you have to let them fail. Okay. You have to let them fail and you have to teach them all of the answers that you know along the way so that they can take this knowledge, apply it to themselves, and progressively figure out those answers. And so at the end of the day, and I knew this when I was playing, and you knew this when you were playing, it's not anybody's job to make sure that I get to the big leagues. And that all of the answers that everybody gives me might get me to 95. But if I want to get to 100 miles per hour, I'm going to have to find those last couple answers.
Hmm. Yeah, that's awesome. So basically, you get to Driveline, you're 90, 92, and now you're living with Jagus and Rob Hill, and you guys are just brainstorming and just studying. And then, when I got there, I saw you do a velo off with Carson Lindo. Is that what his name is?
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, and you guys were sitting, 97, 98. So what was the couple big things that happened during that time that got you from 92 to 97, 98?
Yeah. So the first thing that we did was we took all of the things that I considered were plyo drills, and we turned them into actual functional plyo drills that didn't just look like I was making stuff up. Okay, so I figured out how to move. I always knew how to be strong and fast. That was never a problem for me. I had to learn how to create separation, and I had to learn how to time up my body. And ultimately, I think that this is the largest part of pitching, right? Is energy is king. And we know energy is king because we can have a bunch of people that throw 100 and a bunch of gurus can actually explain to me why they perfectly throw 100, okay? Nobody can explain it to me. We just have a bunch of random things that we think are why they throw 100. I'm being honest. And so at the end of the day, the only thing that's not going to drive us away from everything is energy is king. Okay. And it's why a kid can have bad mechanics and throw 100, and why if you make their mechanics good, they might throw 96. And so we have to observe and realize, even when I was training, right, that like me trying hard all the time wasn't the greatest idea. Okay. I had to actually take a step back and realize, all right, all right, all right. Maybe me just yelling as loud as I can and brute forcing this ball somewhere towards home plate is not the most effective way to throw 100. And then you learn that it's not. You learn that throwing really hard is holding yourself in reverse as best as you possibly can, and timing these impulses at the perfect timing. Okay. And if you miss that timing, you can lose a couple miles per hour. And so everybody thinks it's go, go, go forward. What I learned is that it's energy forward. You're holding all of your body back as hard as you possibly can. And then for one split second, you turn everything on in the correct order. And that's throwing hard.
So you say like holding everything back, like what do you mean by that? Is it like practical things that you can actually do? Is like keep your glove side closed, like stay in counter rotation, or like what's like a practical thing that people can take away from, all right, just holding everything back?
Yeah. So essentially, it comes down to when we're trying to hold everything back in our body, when we're trying to time everything up and get the largest possible stretch out of our muscle tissues, we want to be thinking about, okay, if I release all of my energy as hard as I can right now at that target, am I able to rotate as hard as I can and stop myself to where my energy would direct itself through the target? Is my energy through the target? Um, and if the answer is no, if our energy is away from the target, or maybe it's way to the other side of the target, then something is happening in our system, ourself in reverse. We want to be thinking about how can we stretch our muscle tissues as much as possible to our peak performance genetic area, and then how do we take that stretch and turn on the impulse to also simultaneously fill the gap. Okay, because it's not just a muscle group pulling on itself, it's also an active firing of the muscle group. And so if we take our body and we don't let it stretch, and let's say we get to here and then we fire, well, we're only utilizing 50% of all of our possible energy. And so it's about finding basically our range of motion that we can utilize across our entire body to take this baseball and project it through the catcher as hard as we possibly can, and be efficient with our direction. And so that, I think, is the easiest way to explain it.
Yeah, yeah, that makes sense. So yeah, basically you're just holding everything back so you can just snap at the last second.
Yeah, because our body's tissues are diagonal and pitching is diagonal. Okay. And so if we're not fully utilizing the diagonal stretch of our body, which is called biotensegrity, then we're not playing into the base foundation of how our bodies are created. And so when our bodies are created to be diagonally stretched, we all have a certain amount that works for us and a certain amount that doesn't work for us. But the average amount is pretty consistent. It's pretty consistently within the same window.
Okay. Yeah, that's awesome. So I want to dive into so now you're throwing in the upper 90, sorry. And then we throw in a pro day together. I remember that. We both throw in a pro day. It wasn't my best pro day, but I was still in the mid 90s, and I think you were. What did you hit in that pro day?
Oh, terrible. 94.
Oh, so you hit 94, but you still got a call from the Phillies, right, to go and try out.
Yeah, so all of my pro days so far have been terrible. Um, and thank goodness that all the people that actually cared about my arm came to watch me in live at bats because, genuinely speaking, my bullpens are terrible. And that's because when I'm throwing a bullpen, it's only me competing against myself. And that drives me crazy because I can't win that. It's impossible to beat me. I promise. I'm not going to win. Okay. I have the utmost expectation of myself to hit 25 out of 25 spots. Even as unrealistic as that sounds, if I only hit 24, I'm yelling. Okay. And so I threw a terrible pro day. I had actually just finished coming down from pneumonia. I had lost 20 pounds. Um, and so I show up to this pro day down 20 pounds, feeling terrible. And I actually did all right hitting my spots, but all my stuff was bad. And I was only 92, 94, primarily 92. And it was bad. Yeah. All my pro days have been terrible. But the Phillies had seen me previously before this pro day, and they had saw me in live at bats. And when the live at bats was happening, because it was the first time the Phillies came to watch me, they actually just came for a high school kid. The Phillies came to watch a high school kid. Bodie told the Philly scout that he should stick around and watch this redhead kid named Albertus. And so Zach Friedman, who was the scout, ends up sticking around to watch me throw live at bats. So I'm throwing live at bats, don't give up a hit, almost strike everybody out. And, well, problematically, after three batters of this bullpen, I was sick, guys, extremely sick. Like, I had been throwing up for the past 12 hours. I woke up that morning. I felt terrible. I drank a bunch of coffee. I tried to eat some food. Almost threw up eating the food. And I was just like, you know what? Whatever. We're going to throw live at bats. Okay. So I go, I'm sitting 94 to 96, and three batters in, I just start throwing up everywhere. Um, I run to the trash can. And I just start projectile vomiting. Rob Hill's videotaping it at the time. I look to my right. He's like got the camera all up in my face while I'm yakking. So wherever that footage is, we need to find it. And I just start throwing up everywhere. Everybody's looking at me like I'm crazy. And I just grabbed the ball and yelled, "Puke and rally, baby!" And I got back on the mound. And I just kept throwing the live ABs until I almost threw up again. And then everybody was like, "All right, we can't do this anymore. You're good. You're good." So the Philly scout was obviously really hesitant to shake my hand because obviously I was so sick I was yakking everywhere. So rightfully so. He had me fill out a form, and from then on it was just we stayed in contact. They came out to the pro day and I sucked, and then they called me and they're like, "Hey, can you go back to back and throw this next day live at bats at this junior college?" And so I was like, "Yeah, of course I can." and and everybody's telling me, "Bertus, don't go throw live at bats. You just threw a pro day. You just threw 35 pitches. You can't just go throw tomorrow." And thank goodness I ignored everyone. And I actually went to throw. I show up to the field. Blake Snell's dad is the coach of this junior college, okay? He's the man. Blake Snell's dad is the man. So if you're watching this, Coach Snell, you're the man, all right? But I show up. I go out there. I throw like 25 pitches. I'm sitting 93, 94. Everybody's out there. And they're like, "All right, like that was a really good bullpen. You done?" And I was like, "No, give me your effing hitters." And they were like, "What?" And I was like, "Give me your effing hitters." I was like, I didn't drive an hour and a half to sit here and throw a bullpen. Give me your hitters. And so sure enough, they give me their hitters. I strike out two guys. One guy pops up. And I walk up to the general manager or the assistant general manager at the Phillies at the time, who's Brian Minetti. And I'm like, hey, so when can we do this thing? I'll take a Snickers bar right now. I was like, no, that's not what I said. Hold on, redo. So I walk up to Minetti and I'm like, hey, Brian. No, I didn't know his fucking name. I walk up to Minetti and I'm like, hey, man, so when are we going to do this? I was like, I'll take $0. I just want to play. I don't care. I was like, please get me out of here as fast as possible. And he's obviously like, who in the world is this guy? Because all the other players are keeping to themselves. They're quiet. They're minding their own business. Here I am, like me and Blake Snell's dad are so fired up, we're yelling. And then I'm like walking up to the assistant general manager and I'm like, so where's my job? And so I tell him I'll take $0. I don't care. I just want to play. And sure enough, he starts laughing. We start making jokes and he's like, hey, we'll give you a Snickers bar. I was like, look, you give me that? I was like, I'll split it with you. I was like, we can cut it in half, man. Just let me go play. And so we kept talking, and that was the end of it. And I think that was really what secured my job in professional baseball, because my pro days sucked. They were all historically bad. They probably always will be. But when it was time to compete and I was healthy, I've always been good. And so that's where I shine. It's not in bullpens. It's always in competition. And so I'm glad that I ignored everyone's advice and went back to back after a pro day and went through for the Phillies, because it ended up getting me signed to go play for the Phillies.
Yeah, no, that's so funny. That's a legendary story right there, and I've heard it from Maniti as well when with the Phillies, and yeah, that's just awesome. So, before we wrap up, walk us through like quickly like what happened in minor league baseball, like your experience, um, and where you're looking to go from here.
Yeah, so um, I don't know if I can even answer that question for you, my guy. I don't know if I can truthfully even tell you what I'm going to do right now. I can't even tell you what I'm going to do with this shit tomorrow, man. I don't think I can answer that question because everything that I
Just
say is.
have just your minor league experience then.
Oh, okay, yeah. So my minor league experience was awesome. I go and I used to be the guy who has an ADRA in college. I go get my first attempt at playing professional baseball. And I have at sub 1 ERA. I can't remember what it was my first year. It was less than a 1 is something. And I just remember the first thing that I learned was everybody's a lot better here. And I'm not going to lie. I was looking around at first and I'm sitting here and I'm like, you know, do I belong here? Like, what's going on? My catch partner's throwing 100-mile-per-hour fastballs, 91-mile-per-hour sliders. Like, I'm sitting 2 to 4, okay? And Schultz is out here pumping 100. I'm legally blind, and this guy is just blowing me up, okay? I can't even see anything, and my catch partner throws 100 miles per hour. I'm definitely wondering if I'm supposed to be there, but honestly, I think the thing that really propelled me ahead of everybody was that I didn't really look at it as this larger than life thing, you know? Like I had already envisioned this for so long in my life that by the time that I got there, it was realistically just me having fun. I had already stressed as much as humanly possible about this game. Okay. So by the time that I got to finally go and play this game, after sucking as much as I did, everything was easy. And while I was healthy the whole time, it was easy. And it wasn't that I was this miraculously good player who had this crazy stuff in command. It was just the fact that I loved the game so much and that I had so much fun playing the game that all of this pressure that everybody felt, I never felt. So no situation was too big for me. And unfortunately, my career was cut short by, injuries and rehab and problems. And honestly, like, that's just part of life, you know? I had an awesome time. The whole time I was healthy, I had less than a 2 ERA. And every time I was dealing with something in my elbow or something in my shoulder, yeah, obviously I had above like a 7 ERA. But uh, that's just life. We just move on.
Hmm.
But at the end of the day, I wasn't about to sit here and not throw for my boys. Like I would have rather
Yeah.
thrown in pain every time and competed with my boys than gone back on that IL. So regardless of the injuries and the ups and the downs, the ups were super high. Like the ups were as high as I could have ever imagined them. Okay. And then the lows, I'm going to be honest, they're as low as you could also imagine them. And like that's why baseball is such a sport of consistency. Okay. And that's why these players who get paid the most money, it's because they're the most consistent. Because in all reality, you're living in a world that is here and here. Okay. You rarely ever live here. If you're living here, you're probably in the minor leagues. But realistically, even in the minor leagues, when it starts to get serious and you're not in rookie ball anymore and you're starting to see better talent, like it just slowly gets bigger and bigger, okay? And that's why the people who have the most success are the people that stay here regardless of how big it gets. And I think that was a massive part of my success as well is it didn't matter who I was in a room with. I look at us as we're all the same, okay? And I'll do anything for the person to my left and the person to my right, especially if they're on my team. And then it's like, then you take those highs, you take those lows, you take all the good experiences and everything in between, and you just keep pressing forward. And for some people, they play 14 years of indie ball and then they finally go and make it to the big leagues, like Brandon Mann. you know. And some people they make it to the big leagues without ever playing a minor league game because they're so good, like Garrett Crochet. And so it's not up to you which path is yours. It's not. It's just your path. And regardless of if you make it or not, realize that most of the people around you aren't typically going to want to be there. And you need to not let that affect you, okay? Because as you progress through the minor leagues, the people who don't want to be there slowly start to get weeded out. And the people that want to be there the most and that love the game, they prosper. They have a great career, they have a great life. Some of the most loose players are the best players. And there's just something to be said about how well they hold themselves with that looseness and consistency in such a game of extremes. Um, but yeah, moving forward, we're just going to keep on pushing forward and see what happens. And ultimately, regardless of what happens, I realized that um, I had an awesome time, you know, and that I was objectively extremely good. And I had really good stuff before I left Tread. And you can go look at all my stuff and you'll see that it was really good. And so ultimately, I've just come to the fact that I have closure with my career because I did everything I could. I signed every single baseball that was asked of me until every fan would leave the stadium. Um, I tipped every single clubby. I took care of all my teammates. And ultimately, in a game of extremes, when your career comes to an end, the thing that you're going to care about most and the most important thing was how did you treat your teammates? And when you weren't having a good time, were you still the person on your team that um, made sure, fuck, how do I put this? You had to make sure that even when you weren't having a good time and when everything felt like it sucked for certain people, that you realize we're living millions of kids' dreams. Okay. and
Mm.
that it's really
Yeah.
not that bad. And that if it is that bad, at some point along the way, you lost the part of you that was a kid inside that loved to play the game, and you started to take it a little bit too serious,
Hmm.
you know?
Yeah. Yeah. No, that's something that I preach is that the number one, competitive advantage or important thing that you can have as a baseball player is the passion for the game. And once you lose that, it's just a steep, still uphill battle from there on. But if you do have it, then, like discipline, work ethic, all of that comes easy to you because you just love doing it. And
Yeah.
so, yeah, that's super awesome. Well, yeah, I think that was awesome. So many gems in there. I want to wrap it up now, but where can people find you?
Yeah. So if you guys want to find me, you can go on Twitter, look up Albertus the Fourth. On every social media, I have my full name. That's not on accident. It's so that you can all find me easy. Just look up Albertus Barber or just look up Albertus Barber on any social media. We'll upload social media content every day. We're going to be constantly putting out free information for you guys, making sure that we're putting the power in the players' hands and really helping turn you guys into your best coach, right? Because, like I said earlier, at the end of the day, every single coach is guessing to try to help you progress forward. You're the only one who's going to have the real answers to get you to the big leagues, okay? I have a belief that every coach, or I have a belief that every player can make it to the minor leagues. But how far that they make it in the minor leagues is based on how much they control their own career, aside from all the life things in politics that can happen, right? So take
Hmm.
control of your career, hit us up on social media, and thank you, Josh, for the podcast. It was an awesome time, man. And yeah, look forward to next time.
Awesome. Thanks so much for coming on.